Guys, so welcome back to my channel. So today I have a highly requested video for all of you hashtag series fans. I'm going to be doing the first chapter read of hashtag player, which is the third book in the hashtag series. Yeah, so that's it. On an unrelated note, I tried to give up coffee yesterday. Can we just talk about it for a minute? It was the worst 6 hours of my life. I don't even know what happened. I'm like, oh, I could do this. No big deal. It's just coffee. I don't, caffeine, we don't need this. Well, this girl needs it. Because by 3 o'clock, I was crying. Like literally crying. And finally I was like, nope, not today. So I made a cup of coffee and I guess now I'm sitting here drinking tea. Yeah, so back on the caffeine bandwagon. Yeah. But anyway, I know you really wanted to know that information. So yeah, so I'm going to start with the chapter 1 read of Player, and Player is right there behind me. Can you see it? That's it. It comes out March 9th, and I know many of you are like, please release it early, please release it early. Look, it's still in editing. What is up with this? Hey guys. Let me just fix myself. Every time I look in the camera, I'm like, oh my god, it's like everywhere. Okay. Now, as for all of you who want me to release it early, it's still in editing. I cannot release it yet. I have to give my editor time to fix all of my cambriahisms, as we like to say, and all of my text writing. Sometimes I'll write words without even realizing it, like I'm texting them. You have a texting problem when your editor has to fix your English language to actually be English instead of text speak. But anyway, so yeah, you don't want me to put it out right now. It wouldn't be very good, but I'm going to be reading it off my phone today. I know you can't see it. Sorry, there's part of the hashtag, or the BuzzFeed notification at the top of the chapter. So yeah, so bear with me, and disclaimer, as I do in all of my chapter reads, I am not a professional narrator. I will probably stumble and be like, what does that say? But you guys seem to like these videos. God bless you. Every single one. So yeah, I know y'all are probably like, would you just get on with it? So here we go. Chapter 1 of hashtag Player, and the notification at the top reads, a hush has fallen over the entire campus of Alpha U. Students want answers. Hashtag waiting on Romeo. And I do want to add that if you have not read the first 2 books in this series, this chapter is going to be spoilery. So if you don't want to know what happens at the end of Hater, don't watch this video, because it'll give stuff away for you. Okay, so here we go. And as you know, let me just give you a little recap. We last saw Romeo and Rimmel at the hospital in Maryland. They had been attacked by the evil Zack of Alpha U, and Romeo has then announced to Rimmel that his arm is broken. And we know that this is very bad because he is a quarterback and his throwing arm is broken. This is bad, people. Bad. So now I take you to the first chapter where we find out, or do we, about Romeo and Rimmel. Okay, so it's in Rimmel's point of view, and it starts out with her thinking back to words that she heard in Hater. You could find out her entire family is full of murderers, and I would still love her. Funny you should say that, because it appears her father is the one who killed her mother. Dun, dun, dun. That wasn't in there. I just wanted to add that. A little fun. It wasn't true. Even my sharp denial wouldn't stop what I overheard from pounding inside my brain over and over again until I swear my heart beat to the rhythm of those words. And just like a heartbeat no one could hear, but I sure as hell felt it. I couldn't think about that right now. There was no room to feel the implications of Valerie's accusation. My focus could only be on the man who sat closely beside me. His body wasn't relaxed like it normally was, and even though he tried to smile at me with his easygoing, no-worry smile, it didn't quite come through. He was worried, anxious, and probably in pain. Though I'd have better luck pulling out my teeth with my own fingers than to actually hear him admit any part of him was in pain. He didn't have to say it, and I didn't have to hear it. I knew, and Romeo was all that mattered right now. "You doing okay?" I whispered, tilting my head up to look at his face. His blue eyes found mine, and he smiled. Waiting sucks. It seemed like we'd been in that room for hours. Maybe it had been. I really couldn't say. The concept of time had been reduced to moments, one moment after the next. It had always been that way since I stepped into the indoor football field, thinking Romeo had asked me to be there. One moment I was giddy with anticipation, and the next I was hanging vicariously from a field goalpost, strung up by a rope, and looking into the eyes of someone who clearly had come unhinged. I shivered, and Romeo's arm tightened around me. His hand came up and flattened against the side of my head as he gently steered it against his chest. "You still cold?" he rumbled. I felt the words echo in his chest more than I actually heard them. "No," I replied. He was too close for me to be cold. But not even the steadfast warmth of the man I loved was going to be enough to completely erase the memory of what Zach had done to me, to us. "Relax," Romeo whispered, trying once more to push me further against him. I held myself stiffly and lifted my head despite his effort. "I don't want to lean on you anymore," I said. "Your arm is broken," he said, "and it's over here." He pointed across his body where he held it closely against him. The skin was a mottled purple color and the flesh was swollen. My stomach flipped over every single time I looked at it. His arm wouldn't be like that if he hadn't climbed up on that field goal to get me down. "You're on this side," he went on, like he didn't realize just how upsetting it was to see him like that, "and you aren't hurting me." I gave in and laid against him. He wasn't wearing a shirt, and his skin was smooth. His body was so solid and strong that when I closed my eyes, I could pretend nothing on him could ever possibly be broken. There I go with the stuttering. "Rim," he whispered a few minutes later. "I need you to tell me what happened." His voice was harsh. "Before I got there." My eyes sprang open. Why would he even want to know? Why would he even want to relive anything that happened on that field even a second more than he had to? "It's over, Romeo. There's no reason to bring it back up." "Hey," he whispered. He slid his body out from under mine. I moved immediately, thinking maybe my weight was hurting him after all. But before I could go very far, he turned onto his side to face me and palmed my hip, gently motioning for me to do the same. I glanced down in alarm because the hand he was holding me with was attached to his broken arm. He hadn't moved it that far, or even that much, but I didn't want him to move it at all. Even as my body obeyed, turning on my side so we were face to face, my eyes went right to the place just above his elbow, where the skin was clearly traumatized. I really hope they came in here soon, and I hope they brought a giant Band-Aid. I knew it wouldn't fix what happened, but maybe not having to stare at it every second would make it easier to process. "Hey," he said again, his voice gruff yet commanding. I looked up. He shook his head slowly, silently telling me to stop. His hand stayed still against the curve of my hip, but he touched me nowhere else. He didn't have to. The azure shade of his eyes caressed me to my soul. I swear he looked at me like no one else ever could. It was like there was nothing else in existence except for me. It was like he just wasn't looking at me, but in me, and I was the most precious thing he'd ever seen. I got caught up in that gaze. I got caught up in him. My chest felt like it caved in, but not in a disaster sort of way, like it was sealing in everything he was saying, even though no words ever left his tongue. "How do you do it?" I whispered. My tongue felt thick against the roof of my mouth. "Do what?" he asked. That look never once left his eyes. If anything, it swept me in tighter. "How do you look at me like I'm everything?" He made a low sound in the deepest part of his throat, sort of like a growl, sort of like an agreement. "Because you are." "Romeo," I sighed. "Rimmel," he replied. "Don't forget." I started to pull back from the moment, but his fingers tightened on my hip. I looked back up. Don't forget this moment. Don't forget the absolute truth in the way you feel right now. I love you, and I'm not going to stop. Emotion welled up in my throat, and tears rushed to the backs of my eyes. His words were beautiful, but it was the reason he said them that made me so choked up. Beyond this moment, this quiet, whole moment with him, were many more that weren't going to be like this. We were going to have to keep fighting to keep what was ours. I'm not going to stop either, I whispered. A smile stretched out over his face and lit up his eyes. I leaned closer and sealed my vow with my lips. The rush of heat I always felt when we kissed tingled my toes and curled into the blankets. I opened my mouth so his tongue could venture inside me, and I sighed, so wanting to feel him. But the moment was cut short. The door opened, and a man with graying hair and a white coat and a file in his hand stepped in. Mr. Anderson, he said, looking straight at Romeo. It was like he didn't even notice the bubble that Romeo and I were in. Your X-ray results are in. The bubble burst abruptly, and reality rushed back in. Romeo's dad came in the room, his face concerned, as Valerie hovered just outside the door, staring into the room like it was some forbidden fruit. I scrambled up to sit on the mattress, ignoring the protests of my sore body. Romeo did the same, but moving much more gingerly. In the space between us on the mattress, our fingers intertwined. How bad is it? Romeo asked. For once, I heard fear in his tone. I glanced at him. He glanced at me. Our moment was over. The fight started now. So that's it. That's the first chapter of Player. I hope that you enjoyed that, and I hope I didn't totally screw it up too bad. But yeah, so that's the first chapter. And chapter 2 goes on with Romeo's point of view, and the buzz at the top of that chapter is hashtag FYI, the local pizza joint is delivering. Use discount code hashtag AlphaDown for 20% off. Hashtag feeding the hungry while they wait. So if you want to know more about Romeo's arm and Rimmel and what happens when they leave the hospital, then you can pick up Player on March 9th. It will be in ebook, and it will also be in paperback as soon as I get it pushed through the publisher, the printer, and up online. So that's Player. I hope you guys enjoyed a sneak peek of the first chapter, and I will see you guys soon. Thanks. Bye. Oh, hello. Welcome to another episode of Sitting Here with Cambria. Pardon me while I sit here, drink my tea. Ooh, do you see this mug? Okay, do you see how the handle is black? When the mug is not hot, it's all black. But then when you put water in it and you make hot tea or coffee or whatever, look at what turns on. All my covers. Isn't that awesome? It's like magic. Yeah, I know. You really wanted to know that, didn't you? Mm-hmm. And that'll do it for this episode. La la. La la. Ta-ta. No.